Hello. It's a scary video title, isn't it? Is my tarot collection complete? Um, but I think it's a question that we all have to ask from time to time, because of course, related to that question is, why do I have so many tarot decks? Well, for me, the reason I have tarot decks is, look, there are several reasons. One is that I'm interested in studying how meaning has been ascribed to the cards down the centuries from the very earliest times onwards, how people have used the images on the cards to write meaning onto them and to write meaning into what they see there. In other words, how tarot works as a sort of a semiotic system, a system of symbol and icon and everything that comes out of that. So that's one reason. I'm interested in how tarot cards have meanings attached to them by people. The other reason that I collect the cards is because I use them, and what I use them for is really as a source of sort of visual and imaginative inspiration, as a tool for introspection and for meditation. And that's just about it. I only use them for myself. I don't, quotes, read the cards for other people. And so, over about the last 3 years or something, I've amassed a collection of roughly, I think 20 decks, 21 maybe at a push, 19, 20, 21, call it 20. And about, I think about 18 months or 2 years ago, somewhere around there, I found on Cheryl Smith's blog, which I'll link to below the video, I found there she did a blog on building a historic tarot collection, which is an immensely useful blog post. At least I've found it so. Very, very useful indeed. And I've really used that as my guide to getting a set of packs of cards. And as of this week, I look at Cheryl Smith's blog entry and I find that I'm there with regard to how she describes building up a historic collection. I'll go into it a little bit. Cheryl Smith splits her idea of how to build a historic collection into 5 headings, and I've added a 6th heading to that, which I'll come to in a bit. And I've got some of my cards out here, not all of them by any means. I've got some of my cards here so that we can actually run through and see how what I've amassed relates to Cheryl Smith's categories. And the first category she mentions is she says the 15th century. I'm calling that pre-Marseille. And of course, what we automatically think of, I think, is from the 15th century is the Visconti decks. And there are many editions of the several Visconti decks. I happen to have the cheap one. Actually, with any set of cards, you usually find that I have the cheap one. This is the one that comes in a pack with a rather good book, and it comes in a pack called the Golden Tarot. And it's just dropped out of my head who produced and edited that. It's called the Golden Tarot. It comes with the deck, a book, and a reading cloth, and it's really rather good. It's not great, the cards are fairly flimsy, whereas, we know that the originals, I think, were painted on board. But as a reproduction, with the wear and tear touched in and repainted, and with the missing cards repainted, were they missing, or were they never there? We don't know. Made up to a 78 card deck anyway. It's really rather good. I like it. The images are great. The backs are lovely. that lovely sort of damask pattern on the backs. So that's my copy, my edition of the Visconti Sforza, and I really rather like it. I really rather like it. The colours are gorgeous. And also from probably the end of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th, and very much a pre-Marseille deck, is my very recent addition to the collection, which you'll have seen in a previous video, the Budapest, as restored and edited by Sullivan Hismans. And this is so beautiful. This really is. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've done a video on it. I won't go into it anymore now, but it's just beyond wonderful. I do wonder whether perhaps into the pre-Marseille camp I should also put my anonymous Tarot de Paris from round about the early 1600s. I think that's pushing it for an early tarot deck. I'm not sure whether to put that in that category or another one. But anyway, that's pre-Marseille, which Cheryl Smith calls 15th century. And then there's the jump to Marseille. And I must admit, I'm a bit of a Marseille fan. I love the images of the Marseille and its slight variants. They are so rich, so beautiful, and the small differences in the editions and in the various card makers, such as facial expression on the people in the cards and so on, is just, it's just wonderful to look at and to study and all the rest of it. And of course into this category fall things like the Jean Noble, as restored here by Jean-Claude Flournoy. A deck I've had for some time now, and I still look at it actually virtually every day. It's just lovely. The images are just so beautiful, so gorgeous, from about 1650. A slight oddity in the Marseille camp in that it's not even really quite what we call Tarot de Marseille Type 1. It sort of predates all that, I suppose, as far as we know. But there it is. Also, as said in a previous video, the one that I treat as my benchmark Marseille is the Swiss version by Claude Bourdelle from 1751. Extremely beautiful deck. Not quite rigorously Marseille. There are hilts on the swords, for instance. There's extra decoration on some of the cards. But as I said in my unpackaging video, it's more than enough Marseille for me. To go with that, I also have an edition of the Errant photo reproduction of the Nicholas Conver deck from 1760. It really is just a photo reproduction. It's, I think, smaller than the original. It's roughly what we would call playing card size. Very lovely. Of course, into that class, the Marseille as well, you can come right up to date with things like the Grimaud edition of Paul Marteau's re-editing and recolouring of the Marseille Tarot from 1930, and I have one of those. And of course, then you've got to say, well, are we going to put into there the variants such as the Ancient Italian, the Vandenborre Bacchus, things like that, you know, the Flemish, Swiss, Italian variants, and the engraved tarots like the Ancient Italian that go into the 18th and right to the end of the 19th century. They're all sort of within the Marseille family tree. Moving on to Cheryl Smith's third category, she mentions the occult tarots as originated in the 18th century by people like Eteia. And the most recent addition to my collection is the Tarot Égyptien, which is a sort of Eteia variant from 1875, reproducing a deck that I think originally appeared in the 1840s, And this is the very recent reissue by Lo Scarabeo in their Anima Antiqua range. I must admit, the occult tarots, this and the next one I'm going to mention, I've got really out of a sense of duty. They don't appeal to me particularly. But if one is going to study the symbology of tarot and how it's developed and its history and all of that, you really have to have a representation of this tradition in your collection. The cards are actually beautiful, beautifully printed, beautifully designed, but it's not a system that really appeals to me at all. And you know, the all the fake Egyptian stuff and all of that, it's all great fun, but it's not really on my tarot map at all. But it's a lovely deck, very beautiful deck. I might do a walkthrough at some point once I've actually figured out how the thing works. And then obviously you trace the occult tradition down from there through to the 20th century, and you've got things like the Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, as painted by Frida Harris. I'm not a great fan of the Thoth. I use it. I don't use it the way that it's intended, I don't think. I use it in my own little way, because I can, because it's mine. The images are beautiful. The paintings are absolutely stunning. But again, it's not a system that particularly appeals to me. I don't like the astrological stuff. I'm not an astrologer. I don't do all of that. So, you know, that all that stuff really sort of leaves me cold a bit. But there we are. That's, you know, within the categories of what tarot can be, the occult. So I've got the Tarot Egyptien and the Thoth there to sort of fill that gap. And of course then we come to the Rider-Waite. I like it. I like the Rider-Waite. Let's say I'm easily bored by the endless variations on Rider-Waite. And the recolorings and all that sort of thing, again, doesn't really appeal to me. So the only strict Rider-Waite I have in my collection is the so-called the original Rider-Waite. A deck which a lot of people don't like because the drawing is a bit clunky, which I agree with. It is a bit clunky. It could be more refined. A lot of people also don't like the rather, well, what they say is rather dull colours. I like the colours very much because the colour scheme in this deck, it actually does remind me of early 20th century book illustrations and so on. It looks like it. I think if you're trying to reproduce something from about 1910, it's a mistake to go too bright, too vibrant. That doesn't say 1910 to me. This sort of colour scheme does, and I think they're very beautifully done. So that's the only strict Rider-Waite I've got. And then Cheryl Smith's fifth category is the contemporary decks, and here all I'm going to show is a couple of decks, and actually the first one, you know, I wonder, the Fountain Tarot, really one of my favourites, stunning deck. And you know, if you're reading it for whatever purpose, and like I say, you know, I read it for the purposes I said earlier, visual inspiration, introspection, meditation, that kind of thing, it reads beautifully, absolutely beautifully, because the images are so rich and so interpretable. Really, I mean, it's an astonishing piece of work, it really is. And a lot of these cards, you know, are very beautiful paintings. Very beautiful paintings. Gorgeously done, gorgeously conceived. And I did wonder, you know, This is so close to the Rider-Waite-Smith system. Which heading do you include it under? Do you include it under contemporary, or do you include it under Rider-Waite-Smith? It's very clearly not a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Very clearly not anything to do with the original drawings, but it's very close to the system. But there it is. Let's call it contemporary. And then, others within the contemporary system, another favourite that I got fairly recently is the Night Sun. It's difficult to put this into any of the other categories. It's certainly not Rider-Waite-Smith. It's got some features of the occult systems with the astrological correspondences and astrological imagery painted into the background. The artwork is stunningly beautiful. Computer generated, but stunningly beautiful. I don't think we have to make an excuse for computer generated artwork, do we? It's just beautiful. Really very good, really astonishing piece of work that. So that sits with the contemporary collections. And other decks that I would put in my contemporary decks, a very mixed bunch. There would obviously be the Ring Cycle Tarot that I've done several videos on. Raven's Prophecy is a lovely one that I work with a lot. It's again, it's one of those that the images are so interpretable. It's worth spending a lot of time with the Raven's Prophecy. Things like the Lost Code of Tarot, which again goes back to a PIP system, you've got to put among the contemporary sets. And that then rounds off Cheryl Smith's 5 categories: pre-Marseille, Marseille, occult, Rider-Waite-Smith and contemporary. I'd add another one to that, which is other decks that don't fall into any of those systems. And into one of those, I mean, this could be a contemporary deck, but into those I've put the Crystal Tarot by Elisabetta Trevisan. Again, stunningly beautiful artwork. This is really beautiful. Every card is like a complex stained glass window. It's just so lovely. And the system here is the system by the 19th century occultist, the French occultist Packard, Packard, which led to a Spanish school of tarot reading that uses his system. I mean, other, oh gosh, I can't remember other decks that use the Packard system. There are not many, and this doesn't strictly, it doesn't adhere strictly to his designs, which mostly apply to the minors. But it's on the Packard side of things, and beautifully done. And so that's one that doesn't really fall into any of the other systems except maybe the contemporaries. And of course, I suppose if you got oracle decks and so on, you would put them into another separate heading like other systems. And the only oracle deck I've got, and purely because I love the pictures, is the Druid Plant Oracle, which I might do a walkthrough of sometime, because the paintings are very beautiful. I'm not a fan of a lot of Will Worthington's work in other areas. I'm not that keen on things like the Druidcraft Tarot and so on, but his paintings for the Druid Plant Oracle are stunning. So there we are, with representations from all of Cheryl Smith's categories. Am I going to say that my collection is complete? Well, I suppose in a sense it is, but I suppose in another sense it very definitely isn't, because I've no intention of stopping. The question is, where do you go from here? I have a number of interests. As I've already mentioned, I'm a bit of a Marseille fan, and I would quite like to look at variants in the Marseille. That's one possibility. I am also a fan of modern and contemporary art. You saw me do an unboxing and a flick through of the Dali Tarot a wee while ago. But the question is where to go from here. I have a few things on my wish list, some of which may or may not crop up. I would like to follow a few hunches around the area of the ancient Italian tarot and go down that line to things like the neoclassical, the Perrin, go down that road. And then maybe look at one or two other Marseilles, such as a real type 1 Marseille, such as the Payan or the Dodal, which I haven't got. And then perhaps indulge my interest as well in contemporary work. One deck which I've loved seeing walkthroughs of, for instance, is La Corte dei Tarocchi. So, that's a possibility. I think from here on in my collecting is going to be less frequent than it has. I've been very conscious over the past 2 or 3 years of actually building up a basic collection to work from. And there we are now. Is my collection complete? No. It might slow down. I hope you've enjoyed flicking through it with me. Obviously, when I acquire new things, I shall do videos and let you know why I've acquired them and all of that. Any thoughts you might like to give on fruitful areas of collecting that you've found yourselves? I would love to know about them. I would love tip-offs on things that I haven't seen and don't know about, which are many, many things indeed. I'm still very much a novice, I'm aware of that. But until the next time, when I'm not quite sure what I'll be doing next time, until the next time, thanks for watching.